Diggory, you feel, in fact, can I call it a sport, or do you see it as an act of conservation?
The two things are very much linked. It's not just in Africa, it's throughout the world where hunting properly managed in areas where local people are empowered to protect wildlife, but to sell the right to hunt some of them, a sustainable number, makes the wildlife have a value to those local people in a way that otherwise it doesn't have it. And that means that the locals are protecting the wildlife instead of killing it, and they're getting money from the hunting concessionaire or from the hunter who comes in to hunt a small number of those animals. That's the case, for example, with the markhor in Tajikistan, where it was facing extinction until local people got involved. And they've now increased threefold since the inception of that programme, and the thing looks like it's going to be rescued, and that's purely because local people took it on themselves to take control of it, to protect it, and to licence hunting.
What's your reaction to that, Will?
Well, I mean, there are many values that you can ascribe to wildlife, and Diggory's just given us one, which is a financial value, but there are lots of other values that can be ascribed to wildlife. And if I look at, say, northern Kenya, the Northern Rangelands Trust, which is a relatively new development, local people pooling their land, creating conservancies where wildlife is not killed, where wildlife is viewed. That's 44,000 square kilometres of land that's been brought into conservation status, but no animals are killed and value is derived from them. Wildlife tourism, employment, service industries, guiding. There's a mass of money to be made from wildlife, but it doesn't have to be made by a handful of people who have the wherewithal to do it and can choose not to. If they really want to help conservation, if I had $500,000, do I need to kill an animal in order to provide that money for conservation?
It is very, I mean, I was going to say, it really is. It costs a lot of money to do this, doesn't it?
It does, and what Will said is absolutely right. I mean, and in areas like that, that's fantastic. Make it work. But Kenya banned hunting in 1977, and since that time its populations of wildlife have crashed by 70%. When legal managed hunting is banned,
Will's
hunting
shaking his head at that,
doesn't stop. Hunting continues. Hunting's just been stopped in Botswana. The reports coming back from the groundings in Botswana are terrible in terms of the increase of poaching. If you look at a well-managed hunting concession like the one Danny McCallum used to run in Tanzania, he had it for over 20 years. It was teeming with wildlife. He directly paid for anti-poaching patrols. He also dealt with the anti-logging patrols that were going on there. He made sure that that concession was teeming with wildlife, and it's on the verge of land which is otherwise decimated for cattle use. You fly over these areas, you can see the areas which are designated for hunting because they're green. They're covered in vegetation and full of animals.
Diggory,
the areas around them have
I
got
do
nothing.
need to ask you, because obviously we do appreciate the conservation side of things, and obviously with the financial for locals, with meat and things like that. What about these rich people that fly over there, pay £50,000 to go and get a trophy? What's your view on that? Well,
that's a very reductionist way of looking at what goes on. Most people go hunting to hunt. I know people who've been on 5 lion hunts and have never shot a lion, but it wasn't considered a waste of time. It was considered one of the
goal,
best
though,
things
for them, isn't it?
No, it's a part of the process that leads to that. But the kill at the end of a hunt is part of a much wider thing. It's a complete misrepresentation of what hunters are about, to say that they simply pay money and go and murder an animal. If you wanted to do that, you could go to the pet shop and buy kittens and strangle them. It's not what we're about.
Which we obviously don't advise to do at home.
Exactly, but there is something about this whole expression of trophy. You know, the whole thing of having an animal's head on a wall as a trophy. What is this? It's rather, can I say, base instinct that makes someone want to hunt and kill.
Yeah, let me put it in another way. Animals are killed every day for all sorts of reasons, and most of the time what remains of them is either eaten or turned into something, or thrown into a pit and discarded or turned into pet food. When a hunter goes on a hunt and kills an animal, if it's an edible animal, he'll often eat that animal. I've hunted buffalo in Africa and I've shot the animal, I've eaten it. I've taken the skull and the horns back home and hung them on my wall, because that's a sort of homage to the animal, which I really respect, which took 3 weeks out of my life to hunt in really difficult conditions. Now, that animal was an old buffalo, which was only ever going to be lion food if somebody didn't eat it. Animals don't die in front of the television with a glass of Guinness.
Well, I've got to ask you,
yeah.
you are shaking your head.
There's so much to try and
Is
unpack.
culling necessary? Actually?
Well, that's a different issue. That is trophy hunting is not an animal control, population control method at all, because it does not apply to
so
large numbers
that's
of
the
animals.
area where you really disagree.
It can be, but I won't interrupt. It can be. I
It
can
really
show you
isn't.
where
It
some
really
areas where
isn't
it
a
is.
control mechanism. So all the things that Diggory said. Well, firstly, Kenya's, for example, Kenya's elephant population has more than doubled since 1989. So this idea that in a country that's had a threefold increase in the human population since trophy hunting was banned in 1977 is tanking as far as its wildlife populations are concerned is actually not true. Botswana has very, very low levels of poaching.
That's not true.
It is absolutely true. Compared to the country that you then held up as a model, Tanzania, which does allow trophy hunting and lost 1,000 elephants every month for 5 years.
Well, this debate could rage on, and it will, and so it should. But for now, thank you both, Diggory, and thank you, Will, for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure.